In this video, I'll be sharing with you a tutorial on how to sew this stylish conical backless princess dart blouse. So if this is something you like, kindly hit on the subscribe button. This dress is from Africala, Nigeria. So without much wasting time, let's dive right into today's video. So here's my pattern, and for this blouse, I've marked out my basic measurements, which includes my shoulder to bust, under bust, waist, and then I added 5 inches for my blouse length, which I'll still extend my blouse length. Now, I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2 here. From that point, I'll come down by 1 inch. Now, I'll mark a basic neckline of 3 inches by 3 inches. I'll be using this neckline to serve as line to draw out my pattern. Now, after doing this, I'll connect from that point to my neckline. The next step is to find your chest line. And to find your chest line is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Mine is 7 and I placed my ruler at this point and I'll draw out a straight line. Now, that measurement I have on the shoulder, I'll place it back on my chest line. Your chest line is also your armhole. Now, I'll connect those two lines together, place and divide what I have here into 2. Come out by ½ inch from that point. On the chest line, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Connect from the tip to the ½ inch at the midpoint and my bust circumference divided by 4. Now, after I'm done marking this, I'll start by marking my dart. I'll go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. Now, I'll be marking this all the way to the lower part of my pattern. Go ahead to measure your nipple to nipple and mark. Now, I'll place my ruler and I'll draw out a straight line and connect this all the way to the lower part. Now, after marking this, I'll divide my armhole into 2 equal parts. That same point we have, I'll go ahead to connect from that point to my bust line. This is a princess dart. So now, I'll be marking my dart intake. So for this pattern, I used 1 inch on both sides. You can go ahead to use 1.5 inches if you're plus size. Now, if you don't want to use your pattern, your dart, or share it equally, you can use ½ inch in front and then 1.5 here. Now, if you're plus size, you can go ahead to use 1 inch at the front and 2 inches by the side. Now, I'll place my curved rule, connect from the bust down to the under bust, but come down by 1 inch before connecting that. This is to avoid your pattern from having a pointy edge at that point. Now, from this part, I'll also connect from here down to the other side. Now, this is what I have on both sides. I'll come out by ½ inch on both sides of my armhole. Now, I'll be blending this back to the actual line that I have initially on this pattern. Now, after marking this, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to start inserting my body measurement. But before that, I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline my pattern to make it more visible for you to see. Now, from this point, I'll just come out by 1 inch. That is the ½ inch I took on both sides. I'll extend it to the other side and reconnect to my armhole. While I'm doing this is because when you're joining your princess dart, you find out that the center is slightly longer most times. So now I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4. This 1 inch dart intake here, I'll replace it and add just 1 inch for this pattern. So I'm not adding too much sewing allowance here. Now, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure and replace the dart intake, then add my sewing allowance. Here, I'll just mark my actual waist circumference divided by 4, measure the 2 inches dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance. Now, on the blouse length, I'll go ahead to mark my hip circumference divided by 4, measure the 2 inches dart intake, then add extra 2 inches for the conical effect, but I'll add my sewing allowance of 1 inch first before adding that. So for this conical effect, you can use at least 2 inches or 1.5. It is not that much from the hip. So if you can also use 3 inches, but I feel 3 inches might be too wide for that point. Now I'll just go ahead to connect. Now after connecting, I'm going to go ahead to use my marker and I'm going to blend out that side. After connecting this, I'm going to mark my bust dart. Now, how do you get your bust dart? This is the difference between your shoulder to waist in front and your shoulder to waist at the back. My shoulder to waist in front is 17 inches, while my shoulder to waist at the back is 15.5. Now, take out 15.5 from that 17. You will have 1.5. That is how I got my bust dart. I'll go ahead to place my tape and I'll use about 4.5 inches. Now place your tape and know where is okay for you. So I'm just using this 4.5 inches, and from here I'll mark a basic neckline of 3 inches and I'll connect it down to the center of my pattern. From that 3 inches I'll mark 1.5 inches out. So this is where I'll be attaching the strap, and I'll go ahead to blend this out and then connect it back to the armhole this way. Now, after I'm done connecting, this is what I have. Now, we're going to go ahead to work on the lower part. So I will come down a bit by 1 inch here, but you can still maintain your 5 inches after the waistline. Then I'll connect from here to here, blend my pattern, and from this point, I'm just going to go ahead to go up. Now, I'm trying to create that asymmetric hemline we have for the conical effect. So from here, I'll go up by 1.5 inches and I will connect. From this point now, I'm just going to go ahead to start connecting to the other side. So there's always room for readjustment if you're not okay with what you have. Now, I'll make sure that whatever I have, I'll be able to shape out that extra 1 inch for my sewing allowance, and then I'll come down by 1 inch and connect this way. So this is what I have on this part. I'll just go ahead to blend it out with my marker, and then I'll go ahead to cut it out. So this is what I have actually for this pattern. So after cutting or marking, I'll label my pattern and I'll go ahead to cut. Now at this point, if you have any question, please kindly leave it at the comment section. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please kindly hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, leave your comment at the comment section. You can also join me on my second channel, which is Draft with Maki. There I have a lot of drafting patterns or tutorials. Now I'll just go ahead to cut this out, and while cutting out this part also, make sure that you take out the darts or the unnecessary part of the pattern that you don't need. And while cutting out your pattern, please go ahead to blend out your dart. Now let's go ahead to cut out the back pattern. For the back pattern, I've gone ahead to mark out all the basic measurements just like we did for the front. The only difference between the front and the back is that we have a zipper, and my shoulder to waist at the front is 17, while my shoulder to waist at the back is 15.5. From that, my shoulder to waist at the back, I added additional 5 inches, just like we added additional 5 inches from the waistline of the front. Now, I'll start by marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2 after the zipper line, because for this pattern, we are using a zipper. And for the zipper, I'm using 1.5 inches. Now, I placed my ruler to connect, and on both sides of my nipple to nipple line, I'll mark ½ inch for my darts. And what I'll do is to come down by 1 inch and I'll connect it to the bust area. Now after connecting this, I'll connect all the way to the lower part and connect on this side. Now the next step I'm going to take is to insert my measurement. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4 and add my 1 inch sewing allowance, which I'm using for this dress. Why I'm using a 1 inch is because it has a conical effect. I don't want the sewing allowance to pop out by the side. Marked my waist circumference divided by 4, then I'll measure this dart intake I have here, then replace it by the side, and then go ahead to add my sewing allowance. Now on the blouse length, I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4. So after marking this, to make sure what I have for the front and the side tallies when I'm shaping my dress, to avoid having different shapes on my pattern, I'll pick the pattern that I used for the front and I'm going to place it on the back pattern, and I'm going to go ahead to trace it out. While placing, I'll make sure the waist is on the actual waist of this pattern, and I'll go ahead to trace out. Now after tracing out, after I'm done cutting, I'll go ahead to do the necessary readjustment, because we replace the dart intake of that of the front in at the front pattern, but the back does not have that. So why I did this is just to make sure that I have this actual shape that I have for the front pattern. We'll be doing that after the video to make sure that we are in order. Now I'll just draw out, try and create like an asymmetric shape for the back pattern. Now I use the free hand to create that part. I'll come down by a ½ inch from my chest line and I'll go ahead to connect. Now after I'm done connecting, I'll rule a line connecting back to the chest line. To take out my zipper bulge, I marked ½ inch on the waistline, extended it all the way up, and I'll extend it down. So after marking this, I'll just go ahead to use my scissors and I'm going to go ahead to cut this out. So if you have any question regarding this pattern drafting, please kindly leave your question at the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up, and after cutting out, I went ahead to place my tape at where my hip line stopped on my pattern. Then I added like the extra 2 inches for the conical effect of my pattern, and then measured out the 1 inch for the sewing. So it is the same with that of the front. So join us in our next video where we'll be joining and sewing up this pattern. If you haven't yet subscribed, please go ahead to hit on the subscribe button.